Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm the good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two-Shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good.
Hi and welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, that recovering good girl, and your Victorious Woman Empowerment Partner. And this is where us Victory Chicks and you guys that care about us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to make our lives better, more fulfilling, and give us a little more jazz and sparkle. So thanks for coming to Happy Hour today. Today's guest is somebody most of you already know. You watched her for years on Action News. She's Lisa Thomas-Laury. Now, I know that you loved her when she was on Action News, and most of you know she had a health problem. Today she's here to talk about that, about her time at Action News, and more. And she'll be right here after the break. So, how about that Eagles game? Yes, of course it was good. It would have been good just because the Eagles won. But you know how some Super Bowl games are over in the first quarter? Or you pretty much know at halftime what team is likely to win? But geez Louise, not this Super Bowl. It was a nail-biter to the end. Literally, the very last Hail Mary pass that Tom Brady made as the clock counted down to 0. And if that pass would have been caught, the touchdown would have gone into the field goal, the game could have gone into overtime, and who knows what would have happened. That parade on yesterday could have been in Boston and not here. But it was. And yes, the Eagles were the underdogs. But you know what Jason Kelsey said yesterday? Hungry dogs run faster. But he was good. I'll talk about a little bit more about him in a minute. But I don't know if you noticed this, that the announcers, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, seemed really disappointed every time the Eagles did something good. You know, it seemed like they were really in the bag for the Patriots. Now, at the very first I thought, that was interesting. Then the next time I thought, wait a minute. And then I think it seemed like everyone at my party realized it all at the same time, so then we were trashing the announcers. But in the end, it didn't matter. The Eagles won the Super Bowl, the very first one in the 85-year history of the franchise, and people went wild. Lifelong Eagles fans were brought to tears. Years and years of hoping and praying and getting angry at coaches and players, and all the emotion found its outlet last Sunday with that Eagles win and yesterday's parade. My friend Teresa, and you've met her here at Happy Hour a long time ago. I should have her back on again. She was actually down there. She wasn't outside. She watched the game. Well, not at first. She watched the game from the Pyramid Club on Market Street. And then after the game, that crazy chickie went out into the crowd, and she posted videos and photos on her Facebook page. And today I posted one I thought was really neat. It was Broad Street bathed in green and all the crowd. I posted it on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. I wasn't out there. I was at a party right across the street from my house. And I don't know if you remember me saying I could get plastered and still get home safely. Well, you know what? That wasn't really the case. And not because I got plastered, although I will tell you this. And this is especially for you Scotch drinkers. Gina, if you're listening, we have to do this sometime. We have to drink this sometime. Party host Bill is also a serious Scotch drinker. And he had some 18-year-old Glenlivet. And it was fine. Very fine. I had one glass of that on the rocks, and I was one happy victory chick. Then Bill wanted me to try another one, a Macallan from a special series that was called Edition 2. And it was okay. Not something I'd drink again. I like Macallan, but not that one. That was not so much. But it was 2 drinks, and I switched to soda, or I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that fabulous Eagles win. And it was a good thing because when we left the party, and again, I'm telling you, it was across the street. I had to walk through their driveway, across the road, and across my driveway. There was like a thin sheet of ice on everything, and it was dicey. That little bit of rain did a job on the roads. I was wearing boots and still had to gingerly clomp my way home. One of Joseph's therapists was at a party in Media, and on her way home to Downingtown, she said she saw 4 accidents due to ice. So I hope you traveled safely wherever you watched the game. Then after the game at home, Joseph and I watched some of the post-game celebrations. His 7 o'clock Monday morning person canceled, and he didn't reschedule. So, and he, like many people, got very nostalgic. Between the win and the alcohol, I think a lot of people, it seems like I posted something to myself on Facebook about that. But for Joseph, he was thinking of his buddy Dan. When they were in their 20s, Joseph and Dan had season tickets. I don't know how they could have afforded them because both of them worked jobs that paid almost no money. But, it is when you're single and unattached. I think that some of the concerts I went to when I was single I think I might have paid for them. I think I might have paid for them, by not buying food that week or not paying a bill. But I found the money because back then I absolutely had to get a ticket to that particular artist with my friends to whatever concert it was, even if we sat in the nosebleed seats. But Joseph and Danny went to those games faithfully for years, and then Danny met Pat, and then she would go with them. Well, Danny was best man at our first wedding, and I still remember some of the things he said when he gave the toast. But unfortunately, Danny had a heart attack a couple of months after he turned 50, and he died. So this week it was interesting to hear Joseph talk to Pat about the championship game and the Super Bowl. And then they were yucking it up about some of the stupid things they did when they all had season tickets, including Joseph climbing over some cyclone fence that he wasn't supposed to climb over and getting arrested. So on Super Bowl Sunday, Joseph caught up with that emotion. And meanwhile, I was Googling the Eagles and learned that the franchise started in 1933. That would have been when my dad was just a kid on Eisminger Street in South Philadelphia, which could explain what I thought when I was growing up, an irrational love of the Eagles. He would have loved the Eagles win. And I'm betting he was still watching from the other side. I'll bet you a lot of you know what I'm talking about, with your loved ones who have passed on after years of waiting for an Eagles win. And how about his performances? I heard that Pink had the flu and might not be able to sing the national anthem, but, wow, you know what it's like when you aren't feeling well and you still have to go to work and make a presentation at a meeting or to a client and you have to pull it together? Well, imagine what that must be like when you have to do that in front of the whole world. Screwing up at the Super Bowl could be life-altering or career-altering. Singing the national anthem is hard enough without being sick. But, that tough chickie from Doylestown, in true Philly spirit, got onto the stage, spit out a throat lozenge, and, victorious woman style, knocked everyone's socks off. Well, not everyone. She got a bit of hate on Twitter. And so did Justin Timberlake. What is wrong with people? It's one thing not to like a performance. I've watched enough halftime shows to know, because, some of them, the halftime shows are the things I always really like. Usually while everyone else is filling their bowls with chili and refilling their beer glasses, I'm the one glued to the tube. And even the lackluster ones, if you think about it, you're performing in front of millions of people. And before you even start, a lot of people watching just don't like you. And maybe some of them have never even heard of you. And some people just like to complain about everything. And there you are, alone on the stage or with your troupe, and you're part of that. Can you imagine what kind of head games you have to play with yourself just to get on the stage? I've been on the stage and I've spoken to a crowd, but nothing like a Super Bowl-sized crowd. I don't think I could have done what Pink did. And who couldn't like Justin Timberlake? one of Joseph's therapists was praying that she was hoping. Now, Justin Timberlake and NSYNC wasn't my time, but it was hers because she's in her early 30s. And she said, oh, that would be like the best of the boy bands. So she had like somewhere in the back of her head, she was back at 16, and she was thinking that Justin Timberlake would have brought all the NSYNC people with him. And she said, I know, I just would have lost it. She was so cute. It didn't happen that way, and there was a lot of criticism about everything, like what he wore, how he danced. There was that he should have brought Janet Jackson back so that they could have redeemed themselves at the Super Bowl after that wardrobe malfunction a few years ago. Oh, all that stuff. Not me. I was just happy doing air vocals and for me it was like, got some sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet, dance, dance, dance. And I know you're all really happy I didn't actually try to sing that. Anyway, I liked Pink. I liked Justin. I liked most of the commercials. And I really liked that 18-year-old Scotch. I'll get that again. But best of all, the Eagles won. It's like having a perfect experience. And did you watch any of the parade yesterday? For me, I stopped to have lunch. And then the TV was on, and I thought, well, I'll just watch a little bit while I'm eating lunch. But I got so sucked into it, and I watched, and I was really glad I got to see the whole thing once they came up Broad Street, and then they came up to the Art Museum. And everybody had a little something to say. And then Jason Couch, and people were so funny in the way they responded. That's what I want people to say at my funeral. He was really good. And if you don't mind listening to some profanity, I thought it spoke to a lot of things about life. So I posted a link to the video on the radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. And also I posted the transcript. I don't know who did this. Somebody actually did a transcript of what Kelps said. So that also is on the radio wrap-up. So listen, Lisa Thomas-Laury is here, and I just can't wait for you to talk to her. I saw her a couple of weeks ago last month at the press club. She still looks fabulous. She's such a classy lady, and I'm excited for you to hear what she has to talk about. So go get some good happy hour, something to drink, and come back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering, and it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly. I'm here with a Philly favorite, Lisa Thomas-Laury. Welcome to Happy Hour, Lisa.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here, Annmarie. Nice to talk to you.
Oh, same here. Lisa, you grew up, you were the oldest of 4 kids in Institute, West Virginia. And it was like a little college town. It was, I guess, similar to Westchester, huh?
Yeah, very much like a little Westchester, only a little smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also known as Chemical Valley, and it was the home of West Virginia State College, which at the time was an all-black school. But it was a wonderful little community. We all knew each other, and we all sort of took care of each other. Parents watched out for other kids, But we did have some issues with chemical plants and toxic emissions and brown brown water coming out the faucet and things like that. You may remember the Bhopal, India incident a few years back. There was an emission from a carbide plant that killed thousands and thousands of residents and workers. It emitted methyl isocyanate. The only other place that methyl isocyanate is manufactured and made is in Institute, West Virginia, or was at the time at our carbide plant.
Yeah, I sort of remember that they were trying to say it wasn't their fault, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, it was a methyl isocyanate, or MIC, as they called it, used in making Drano plastic, things like that. I wouldn't, at my young age, come to realize the impact and the meaning of just what that might have had to do with my health situation until much later in life. Right.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I thought, oh, I wonder if that's what caused some of that.
Yeah, I looked into that, researched that.
Well, listen, your first broadcasting job was in the late 70s, and you were doing the weather.
That's correct. It was actually a little earlier. I did that while I was in college.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so it was early to mid-70s that I was the weather girl in Huntington, West Virginia. Was my first broadcasting job. And I have to thank Bill Dotson, an upperclassman, for that. And that sort of changed the course of my career because I had gone to school thinking I'd be a magazine writer. But fell in love with broadcasting, and after doing the weather, was offered an internship and used a 36-millimeter camera, went out and did my own stories, came back and literally spliced and glued the videotape in a little editing room for the news that night. So back then we learned the nuts and bolts of putting news stories on the air.
Lisa, it's funny that I've had several people on that have done it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kay Presto, but she was one of the first journalists in the race car industry. And she was like that, and she was doing that splicing, and,
really?
It was her. She said, I didn't know other people had people do that for them.
Exactly.
And I was curious that with the... there are a lot of seasoned anchors who started in weather. In those days, Lisa, was that like a typical entry-level position in broadcasting?
For women, yes, indeed.
Really?
Diane Sawyers was a weather girl, not a meteorologist. She was a weather girl first at a local station in Kentucky, right there in my tri-state area, a little before me. So, she and Barbara Walters, they were my mentors. Those were my role models. Those were the women I looked up to and wanted to be like. But it sure was. Lots and lots of women got their start as a weather girl.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, and you were in Huntington, West Virginia, and then you went to, you went...
Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville.
Yep.
And it was when you were interviewing for the job in Nashville.
Oh, I forget. How do I forget Oklahoma?
I was going to say, I knew there was something else in between
University
there.
was Oklahoma. I did an 8-month stint there. Learned a lot, but didn't love Oklahoma too much.
And when you went to interview for the job in Nashville, you crossed paths with another young broadcaster.
Yes.
We all know, Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
Now, how did the two of you meet?
Oh, my gosh. You know what? I remember sitting on the hotel bed in my hotel room in awe of this young black woman delivering the news in Nashville solo. There was a CBS affiliate, the same station where I was going to interview the next morning, and you just didn't see that back in 1976. And this woman, I remember, I said, this is a black woman. She was average looking, but she had such a presence. She had such a voice. She was truly phenomenal, authoritative, confident. She was the first person I saw when I walked into the newsroom the next morning. And we just clicked. I mean, we were the only African American women, at that station around. She asked me to spend the night with her that night at her apartment before I left the next morning to go back to Oklahoma. and I learned that she was being considered for a co-anchor position, and that if I did get this job in Nashville, she might actually be gone. She was hoping to co-anchor a newscast in Baltimore, WJZ. And we stayed in touch. And when she went to Baltimore, and then she subsequently made her way to Chicago, and we stayed in touch, and she, we discussed boyfriends and camps and everything, the situation. And I learned that we had been born the same year. We were the same age. She was born in January and I in July. And she went on to do terrific things. There was one thing we discussed she had no interest in, and that was getting married and having a family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I knew we were on different paths as far as that was concerned. But at the time, I was very serious about my career, and if you remember, there were all sorts of commercials with women saying, you can have it both. You can have both.
Oh, yeah.
You can have it all. Not explaining to us how very, very difficult it was going to be.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Wasn't there like you can cook them up, things up in a fry pan or
bacon, serve it up in a pan. Right, never let you forget you're a man. You remember that one?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were sold a bill of goods, Lisa. in that little bit. But you know what? Because we didn't know any better,
right? We
just kept moving forward.
Yeah. And thank good God we did.
Yeah.
Because we learned some lessons, but we didn't do too badly. And but those were very challenging years, but they were remarkable years, because we did get our foot in the door, and we did make some headway with broadcasting and many, many other careers, and we raised our families. We did the best we could. We made our mark back then, and hopefully I've been told that we made a path for other women behind us.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
And when you came to Philadelphia, you were the first African-American woman anchor, right?
I wasn't. I was one of the first. Beverly Williams. Many of our viewers should remember that Beverly Williams at Channel 3, which was NBC at the time, was here before me. She left soon after, then she came back. And there was Edie Huggins, there was Trudy Haynes. They were not anchor women, but they were on television. They were on local television reporting, doing, I think Trudy had her own show. I believe at some point Edie Huggins had her show too. But Beverly was as far as I know, there was another black woman at Channel 6 even before Beverly, and her name escapes me at the time, but her tenure was very short-lived. I think she was there like a few months. But I think there was another black woman who filled in for someone and then did maybe 1 or 2 months. And I'm not sure exactly the full story. But one of the first for sure, and I guess probably the best known, being at the station I was at with PVI with the tremendously high ratings.
Yeah. Somebody was talking to me about Jim Gardner. And he was saying, yes, he's God.
He's what?
God.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the voice of God.
Broadcasting. We tease Jim sometimes, telling him, we're going to have to take you out of here kicking and screaming. I don't think he's thinking about retirement until he thinks he can't do it anymore, and he sure is doing it well.
He surely is. And
he continues to do it, it's at the top of his game, do it better than anyone else.
Lisa, there was another Philly favorite, Jim O'Brien, and if I'm remembering correctly, he was something of a mentor to you, right?
Jim took me under his wing during my, I was hired to anchor the news with Jim and to report in the afternoon, so I was hired to do the noon news with Jim O'Brien. And the first 6 months at PVI were a little tough for me. First of all, I had not anchored before, not a half-hour newscast. I had done 3-minute news, what we called cut-ins, early in the morning, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, little cut-ins. So I had not anchored or co-anchored. I had a little trouble with some pronunciations in Philadelphia, coming from a little small town in West Virginia. I remember bungling Conshohocken and Schuylkill and Moyamensing.
And Punxsutawney.
I went through a few weeks, maybe a month or so of that. My hair was too thick. I had an Appalachian twang. You know, there were certain things they wanted to change about me. And Jim took me under his wing, and one day he said, look, blank 'em. You just have to focus, you know, and concentrate. You're going to be fine. He said, he told me back then that he thought I had a unique talent, and that was to anchor the news like I was talking to a friend. And, you know, effortlessly and not sound like a manufactured anchor woman. And he said, you just need to relax. I think they're getting to you. And he says, so you make some mistakes every day. All of us do. The trick is to recover. The trick is to know how to recover. And he was a godsend to me because I remember bringing in a list of boroughs and townships and just all the names and phrases that had something to do with the tri-state area that I could think of that might trip me up. And he practiced with me. And I got to I became very competent at the anchor desk thanks to Jim. And then he liked to have fun at my expense. You know, he would try to trip me up just to see how I would react. So we had a good rapport.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And he was wonderful. And then 5 years after I arrived, you know, tragically and ironically, he was killed in the skydiving accident. I don't think anybody doesn't know where they were on that day.
Yeah, you're right.
And ironically, it was a watershed moment for my career because I ended up doing the parades that he had done, and I became the 5 o'clock anchor to replace him with Mark Howard. And then we were the longest-running anchor team in local news history after that.
So it's amazing. 19 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lisa, we need to take a break, so we're going to cut away. Everybody hang in there with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we're talking with Lisa Thomas-Laury. And Lisa, I remember you were saying that about Jim O'Brien and that his passing opened a door for you, but you and Mark Howard were quite the team.
Yes, for a long, long time, almost 2 decades. And, you know, these were men who were a lot older than me and had a lot more experience in the industry. I've learned an awful lot from Mark, and we became friends. And ironically, his wife Susan used to produce the show at noon that Jim O'Brien and I did.
How about that?
And they got married, so we were friendly, and it was you know, we like to say we were one big family, but we really were. Mm-hmm. And I had many very good years. You know, that first 20 years after Jim died, after we dealt with the loss and did as he would have wanted us to do and continued on with our lives. And one thing that I don't think some people realized about Jim O'Brien was that he cared deeply about the station, its employees, our work, and that we became the best and that we continued to be the best. So we all, dealt with his passing and realized that he would have wanted us to work harder than ever to make that station the best it could be, and that's what we were about doing after his loss. And Philadelphia was good to me at that time. The city opened its arms and embraced me, and it was a little intimidating, being in his position. He and Mark were very strong at 5 o'clock. And, there was a time when I said, I've got to do it for Jim, and I've do it for myself as well. I've got to be good at this and hope that Mark and I can keep the ratings at least where they were.
And you certainly did.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
And there's something else that Jim O'Brien did that you did, and that was the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yes. I started doing that with Dave Roberts, another, very favorite person there.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a blessing that I had all these wonderful people to work with.
I know you were really with a lot of really good mentoring kind of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I started doing that with Dave, who had been doing it with Jim forever. And for the next 20 years or so, we did not only the Thanksgiving Day Parade, which was, the oldest Thanksgiving Day Parade in the nation, and just a joy to do. We used to tease each other about how when we started, when it was bad weather, the Boy Scouts would bring an umbrella and stand over us because we were on an open platform.
Oh my goodness!
And we didn't even have heaters. We had thick blankets, and by the time I finished doing it and he retired, we had a big tent and canopy heated, and we were totally covered, and we didn't have that little ladder to climb up. They actually built us some stairs.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Well, we had some very good times there.
Are there any things like what happens at the Thanksgiving Day Parade from your end, and what kind of things do you see that the rest of us don't see?
Oh gosh, well we have a lot of activity, noise in our ear when we're starting, because inevitably there's going to be a band or some performance, somebody's out of line or a little bit of a delay, and we need to fill with this. So we've got a lot going on our headsets trying to juggle. And even though we sort of have a script, it's not really a script like it would be the teleprompter for the news, but they're bullet points. And just keeping things in order for that parade. You want to have a good time, but a lot of times things are happening that we don't want you, the audience, to see because it would be very distracting and disruptive. So, the first year or so, it was a little bit of a challenge for me to learn to juggle that, to stay calm and just inviting to the viewer and keep all of that in line. And there would be lots of little funny moments behind the scene. My boys would come down with me. I'd have the babysitter bring the boys down, and not with the Thanksgiving Day Parade, but with the 4th of July Parade. They'd sit right on the edge of our set and watch the fireworks. At the Thanksgiving Day Parade, they'd be all bundled up in the audience watching the floats, and it became a family tradition. They just loved. I remember one year, Langston, my oldest, he was about 9, and he had a little bit of a cold, and I said, I think you guys should watch it from TV. And he just protested and cried. And, I want to be there. I've always been there. So my husband's a doctor, and he said, okay, we'll let you go down, but, there was a hospitality suite or tent over at the Four Seasons. And about halfway through the parade, he was feeling a little bad, so we had to march him over there.
Wow.
But he didn't want to miss that family tradition of going to the parade.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Do they ever go to that now?
You know what? They don't go to the Thanksgiving one as adults now, but I'm getting ready to be a grandmother. And it's later this month, maybe, or the 1st of March. And my oldest, Langston, said he can't wait to he's having a boy, can't wait to take him to the parades. They still go to the 4th of July sometimes, but we are not doing that one now. But, he really wants to take his son to the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Doesn't that make you feel good?
Yeah, very, very good.
That they want to carry on that tradition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that he feels that way about it.
Pretty neat. Well,
yes,
Lisa, listen, you were at the peak of your career when things started to change with your health. So what happened? How did it start?
It was 2001. We reached the millennium, and everything had been so wonderful for so long. And I was at like you said, the height of my career. I was in the perfect health, the best shape of my life. My regimen for the previous decade had been really getting into working out. My sons were in college and high school, and I said, I'll have some time to devote to me. I was in touch with college and high school girlfriends, and we did take a few trips together. But I had a trainer that would come after I would take the boys to school. Actually, both of them were in high school when it started. And I started to feel a strange numbness and tingling in my feet and legs. And then it became a weakness. I would be walking throughout my neighborhood, and it would actually be more difficult and painful to go up the inclines. And, of course, my husband had me see several doctors. At first I thought maybe it's just calluses on my feet. And then we quickly learned that, no, my ankles and feet were tender to the touch, and I knew I was getting weaker. So I went to a neurologist friend of my husband and had an EMG study, a nerve conduction study, and they found out, sure enough, I had lost 33% of the strength in my ankles. I went to the second doctor, neurologist, who was a mentor of my husband's, Dr. Edgar Kenton. He had been chief of neurology at Lincoln Hospital, was the first to diagnose me correctly right from the start. He thought I had a very rare plasma cell dyscrasia disorder called Poems syndrome, like a rhyming poem. Mm-hmm. Each letter stood for a symptom or a feature of my disease. I only had 3 of the symptoms at the time, but he was leaving the hospital. He was getting ready to go to Atlanta to do research, medical research at Morehouse. He referred me to 2 other doctors, and they followed his diagnosis initially and then put their heads together and dismissed it, and declared that they really thought that my symptoms were more in line with something called CIDP, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. That's an autoimmune disease. Long story short, they treated me for that for 2.5 years, and they treated me incorrectly. My condition worsened. I became sicker. The nerves that were being damaged and attacked by my own antibodies soon became my internal nerves, my vagus nerve in my stomach. My voice box became partially paralyzed. And so then I made my way to the Mayo Clinic at the advice of a doctor friend, a wonderful man named Dr. Newman, Dr. Gary Newman. He was my gastroenterologist, and he had read about a woman there who had written the standard of care for poems, because we all kept circling back wondering, did I have poems all along? And sure enough, I did. But by the time I got there, I needed a bone marrow transplant. I was so very sick. I was confined to a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I couldn't walk. I could barely stand for, 5 minutes. But, when I got the first bone marrow transplant, everything started to get better except for the permanent damage that had been done in my feet and legs. So for a long time, I was able to ditch the wheelchair, but for a long time, more than a year, almost 2 years, I wore leg braces. And I just dug right into doing therapy and strength, getting stronger. And one doctor at Penn here had told me I would never go back to work. Went back to work for 8 years and did stories then, which I love. I loved all along. My favorite thing about my job was reporting, actually, more than the anchoring. But I asked my news director, my general manager, I said, I'd really love to do stories of people overcoming obstacles like myself, positive stories. I really don't want to cover the murders and the carjackings and the deadly fires anymore. Man, thank goodness they were willing to let me do that.
That was great.
Yeah.
And and I know from doing my Victorious Woman stories, it always makes you feel like a little bit more upbeat. After you do a story and you hear how some people overcome challenges, and then like when you get a little stuck, then you say, yeah, but so and so did it.
Yeah, there's always someone out there struggling a little harder than you are, with a bigger obstacle. And then, it began a trend. or I don't think I began the trend. I think maybe I had something to do with it locally here. But if you look today on the network news, the anchors have many more positive stories, and they always end the newscast with person of the week. This person's doing this. Because I saw the news from a different perspective when I was ill, when I was on the other side of the camera, and it was depressing. It was true what all my friends and associates and people, even people on the street, were telling me. I don't watch the news anymore. It's too negative. It's too gross and gory and, frightening even. And I saw it that way. I said, we have a lot of negative news. The old saying back in the Walter Cronkite days was, if it bleeds, it leads. And, it was the negative news you reported on. And I think it got to the point where it was too difficult for people to actually take that in and watch on a daily basis. So I'd like to think that when it wasn't so popular, I started doing some positive things. And there were so many positive stories in places like West Philadelphia and Kensington and Camden. There were so many wonderful stories that people probably never knew were happening because they heard so much bad news come out of those areas.
Well, Lisa, we need to take another break, but when we come back, can we talk a little bit about how you handled all of that happened to you, with the poems?
The transplant,
all that.
Absolutely.
How you handled that emotionally. That's what I want to talk about when we come back.
Okay.
So everybody stay tuned. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we're chatting with Lisa Thomas-Laury. And Lisa, you had all those things happen. You were misdiagnosed, and things just went downhill from there. And how did you deal with that emotionally?
I guess just like it would have been for anyone, it was very difficult, Annmarie. I became very depressed at times. I will say that I don't think I ever lost hope. I don't think I really ever, for any length of time, lost hope or faith. But there were moments, I had my moments where I wondered, I was very depressed at some periods. I think when I started really getting stronger emotionally again was when I got that final accurate diagnosis at the Mayo Clinic. And I felt like, wow, because this doctor, Angela Dispensieri is her name, she came in after a week of testing when I first went there, and she said, well, you have poems. You always had it. She says, it's shutting you down. And you're too weak now to have the treatment that you need. She says, you need a bone marrow transplant. I'm going to send you back. I'm going to build you up, give you some nutrients, do some respiratory exercise and therapy to strengthen your pulmonary function. You'll come back in a couple of months. We'll have the bone marrow transplant. She said, you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to be a lot better. You're going to have a good, productive life again. And I believed her immediately. So I started working toward that, and that took me out of that deep, dark hole, I think, that I had spent the previous 3 months in. And it made my husband feel so much better. You can imagine how frustrated he was being a doctor.
Right, being a doctor, yeah.
Asking all the right questions and still not finding an answer, the right answer. So, I had that bone marrow transplant in the summer of 2004. And yes, almost immediately, the first things to come back were the last harsh symptoms that struck me, and that was my vocal cord became better. I could speak better. My pulmonary function improved dramatically. I began to not have stomach issues, digesting my food better. Everything started to feel better, albeit slowly for the physical functioning. And there was some permanent damage in my lower legs and toes and feet. And I probably will never really move my toes again. But I'm walking, still doing therapy, trying to I need to exercise more than I do. But
and you look fabulous. When I saw you last month at Press Club, I thought, she looks fabulous with her short hair. Oh, you look great.
Yeah, got my little short hairdo. And God is good, and I've my family has been strong for me and pushing me. I'm telling you, I didn't know if you wanted to get into the book right away, but I never planned to write a book. But my younger son, when I was at the Mayo Clinic for this bone marrow transplant, the first one, and I'll tell you about the second one I had 8 years later, but I was keeping a journal at the encouragement of my husband and my mother, and the fact that I'm a reporter and I just do that. Mm-hmm. So I kept a journal, but I never intended to write a book. I thought I would write a journal or perhaps a book for my family, just so they knew what this thing was.
Right.
And if they ever discovered that it was hereditary, my family would know.
Oh, they would have some kind of reference.
A reference, exactly. And, when I was there for 2 months to have this bone marrow transplant, everybody took turns, from my sister-in-law to my brothers to, my mother was there the whole time with me. She was there throughout my journey. And my sons, they'd be on spring break, and they'd come up for a few days, and just to give her some assistance, because my mom was in her 80s, and she had rheumatoid arthritis. And so, it was a family affair, and I had that wonderful support. And I stayed in touch with really good friends. But Leland began to say, Mom, you should write a book. You should write a book. And I had this journal, and eight years later, after the second transplant, and I'll say that I had that because poems started to creep back into my life. It is considered a smoldering myeloma. And like cancer, it goes into remission. It can come back. We don't know why. Doctors don't know why. But it started to creep back. And my doctor wanted to be very proactive. And there had been development of a few new drugs at the time. But I didn't tolerate them well. I almost begged for the transplant because I did so much better after it. But after, 2 trials with the drugs, my doctor agreed. Dr. Dispendieri agreed that would be a good idea. And my youngest son, Leland, Mom, you should do this book. And I'm thinking, this is my little son who thinks it'd be neat to do a book. And one day, he sat down with me and he said, I'm serious, Mom. Do you realize how many people you can help? And then it dawned on me that maybe I raised a pretty neat kid. He's actually thinking I can help some people, not just because it would be a cool idea. And I realized, I said, he chose a profession with AmeriHealth Caritas, where he's out in underserved communities, and they do wonderful work for people in need. And that's what he's thinking I can do with this book. So last summer, I took that journal. I had about 4 or 5 editions of it by then, and I really got busy doing the book with the thought that, I'll weave my personal life and my love of writing and broadcasting with this strange, baffling disease that sidelined the career. And it just started to flow. It made sense, and hopefully I put some tips in there and things on how to navigate our difficult healthcare system, because boy, did I think about it when I was trying the paperwork, the challenging, how to be your own advocate. I had doctors who they weren't paying attention to what was happening with me. I don't know if it was the lack of incentive to give me the attention and the care that I needed, or if they had so many patients they couldn't keep up with it. I don't know what it was, but you really have to be your own advocate.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that,
Yeah.
Lisa.
I felt in my gut that maybe I had something more closely related to this poem syndrome than what they said I had, and I wasn't getting better.
Mm.
I really wasn't getting better, and then when it started to get into my internal organs, Bill and I knew it wasn't, and we found the Mayo Clinic just in time to reverse it.
Yeah, that was really, really lucky. And you know, at least we don't have time to talk about the experience you had with your the opioid addiction. Yeah. But it's all in your book. It's on camera and off, when the news is good and when it's not. And I thought, what an interesting title.
Yeah, I thought it was fitting. My publisher actually came up with that, Ed Jukowitz, and he did a wonderful job. But yeah, I put it in there, and I decided to be as transparent as I could, because we are dealing with an opioid crisis, and my sons have lost 3 very good friends in a very short amount of time, just 4 years, to that opioid crisis. And I said, I need to be transparent. It hits everyone. It can happen to you. It can happen to your neighbor. And how to avoid it, how to get through it, how to be true to yourself and acknowledge it.
And that's really important. And you are really transparent in that. And I think that's really a wonderful thing. So, and I put a link to that on today's radio wrap up at victoriouswoman.com, and it is also on Amazon, and it's called On Camera and Off, When the News is Good and When It's Not. And Lisa, I'm glad we could get you. When I asked you if you could come on the show, you said yes, but only before the 18th. Because you have every plan to be a spoiling grandmom, huh?
Yes, I'm so looking forward to it. I'm so excited. So that's the next chapter in my life. I often wondered what it would be when I retired. But it was just delightful being with you this afternoon, Annmarie, and I appreciate the invitation to come on and talk.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I'm so glad that you did. I'm sure that you're helping other people just as they're listening to us now.
I hope so. Yeah. I really do.
Have a fabulous weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful one.
Thank you. And to all of you Victory Chicks and you guys, don't forget that Wednesday is Valentine's Day. If there's someone you want to get a card for, get it today. Tomorrow at the latest, before all the really good ones are gone. And if you're thinking about what to get, I would suggest nothing with a cord. Now, you guys, I know where your minds went. Not even those. You think Christy Cavallo is the only psychic at happy hour? Nothing with a cord, no lingerie, and nothing for the kitchen, unless she specifically wants it for Valentine's Day. So here's what I suggest, and I've said it before, plan something nice. Valentine's Day is in the middle of the week, but you could do it something this weekend or next weekend, and you could go to the Brandywine Wine Trail and do some wineries. You could go to a museum. You could do a movie marathon. Go to the early bird movie, and then go to dinner, and then go back and see another movie. So, and if you plan something for next weekend, tell her. Write it in your Valentine's Day card so she doesn't think that you weren't planning anything, and she doesn't want to think you forgot and didn't get her anything. So, okay, I'll leave you with this quote from Zelda Fitzgerald, who said, "Nobody has ever measured, even poets, how much a heart can hold." Well, this week, whether you have a sweetie in your life, and even if you're missing one, may your heart be holding as much love as it ever has. And may you come back to Friday Happy Hour with me next week. Thanks for coming today. Chenzan.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.